On September 11th, 2001, thousands of people died, and hundreds of thousands of people died after that because of US military intervention into Afghanistan and Iraq. On September 11th, alleged hijackers flew planes into buildings, and one crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. Now, the thing about this is, people now, 14 years on, have been wanting and still wanting an investigation into this. However, the majority of these people say 9/11 was an inside job. Now, if 9/11 was an inside job, who was doing the inside job? Was it the US government? And if so, if it was the US government, how do you expect to get answers from the so-called government by asking them to do an investigation into it, when some claim that it was the US government that, that did it, and people that control the government and give money to the government through lobbying and things like that. The evidence is gone. The evidence is gone. It was taken away. Nobody could look at it, when it happened. They took it away, and the metals and stuff were shipped over to different countries. I believe they made bicycles out of it and other different things. So, one thing that is a fact is that on that day, this so-called thing called government that is supposed to, in a lot of people's minds, protect people, this thing called government that has the best defense systems, supposed to have the best air defense system, the biggest military, the best military, the most technically advanced defense system in the world, failed. That's one thing that we know is a fact. I don't know if you're aware of this, but almost a year before, there was a golfer called Payne Stewart who flew out of Orlando International Airport in his Learjet, and they lost contact with the jet. Air traffic control lost contact with the jet, and within 20 minutes, F-16s were scrambled, and the pilots were actually looking in to the window of the Learjet, and everybody, the pilots had passed out. The pilots of the fighter jets were looking into the window of the Learjet, and everybody had passed out. And they were ordered that if that jet was to come down in a place where there was a lot of people, to turn it to dust. The plane crashed in a field. The Learjet crashed in a field in Utah. I think that there are more things that are in plain sight. I mean, 9/11 was a tragedy, but I think that, what came of that, the war crimes, they're in plain sight. The fact that US military involvement went into Afghanistan and bombed that country and literally murdered people and destroyed their houses and their businesses, and the same thing that they did in Iraq. Those war crimes and the genocide and the war crimes previous to that, all these wars, they're all there in plain sight. I think that if you want to look at you know, prosecuting somebody or, you know, some way, if you know, you want an investigation, whatever it is that you want. I think that these crimes against men and women and children, you know, of these countries, they are easier to, you know, prove. There are some, you know, things that I think of looking at 9/11. But again, how do you prove this? You know, the way that the towers fell, the way that the third building fell, did look like a controlled demolition. But how do you know? How do you know? You don't. You know, it's, you know, it looks like it. You know, in my mind, it looks like it, but it's hard to prove. Buildings have, you know, as a lot of these videos that are out there, like Loose Change, and there are, you know, quite a number of videos pointing out certain facts about certain things that happened on 9/11. Buildings naturally don't fall like that, you know. They fall, there's part of the building left. And fires have broken out in buildings, and the structure, the metal framework, has still, you know, remained there after, you know, the fires have burnt. So the other thing about 9/11 was the fact that the BBC reported that Building 7 had fallen, and right at the back of the news reporter, the building is, you know, still standing, and that was like 30 minutes prior. And then, you know, the satellite went out or something like that. I don't know. It's to me, there's a lot of things that are not, they don't compute. There's a lot of things that are strange about it, let's say that. But, you know, this was created by, you know, U.S. intervention, meddling affairs overseas. These people from other countries, you know, were sick and tired of the U.S. military coming and the United States government forcing their will on these people. And so they decided to hijack planes and fly them into buildings, and one crashed into a field. I find it hard to believe that some guy living in a cave, and yeah, I'm talking about Osama bin Laden, I find it hard to believe that he could orchestrate this thing from within a cave, which is, you know, what they were saying. He was living in these caves, in these mountains. And just war, bloodshed, murder, killing people, blowing up their buildings, just doing this. It's senseless. But, you know, money is made from war. Money is made from war. These people in government get a pretext. You know, 9/11 was a pretext for going into these countries and doing what they did. I'm not a supporter of war. It's not good for anything. But some people make a lot of money out of war. Especially the military-industrial complex. There has to be war in order for the military-industrial complex to exist, because if they are building bombs and fighter jets and aircraft carriers and various, you know, death devices, and there's no use for it. They'll just stockpile, and the companies making these will just go out of business. So, 9/11 inside or outside job? I just think that this again, I just think that this government thing, let the people down, and they created this problem by going into countries and doing, what they're still doing today. Peace.